Welcome to TNN's Daily Headline and Prophecy News with your host and angel of truth, Joan of Arc. Joan will be sharing truth-filled, hard-hitting factual news on a daily basis covering the topics of health, financial, geopolitical issues, and more. So please join Joan as she covers the news in these prophetic times. And remember, the truth shall set you free. We also want to introduce you to our friends at Divine Source Solutions, your divine source for health, prosperity and spiritual growth. They are a diverse group of believers, pastors, doctors, social workers, teachers, public servants, business owners, parents, Native American tribal leaders and more. United by their shared faith in a loving God. Whether you are dealing with health issues, lost a job, losing a home, food scarcity concerns or struggling to prosper financially, they will partner with you to create a workable solution based on your current situation. They share our belief here at Trinity News Network, that there are no governmental or political solutions to the problems we are facing in this fallen world. So their health and prosperity care ministries were created to coach you with spiritually and professionally based real-life solutions to stay healthy and prosper in these difficult times. You may choose to achieve this through a combination of attending their self-paced 52-week video blog Bible study series, online sermons through Fire and Grace Church, free health coaching and weight management guidance, prayer assistance, additional daily headline and prophecy news and more. You can reach out to them at www.divinesourcesolutions.org. We are also proud of our friends at the Support Local Foundation and their humanitarian efforts in restoring health and prosperity, one community at a time. Their local featured small business owners are offering simple local solutions to complex problems in a community near you. So check them out at www.supportlocalfoundation.org. So here's your host and angel of truth, Joan of Arc.
This is Joan of Arc, your host and angel of truth with Trinity News Network, where the truth shall set you free. Welcome and thanks for joining me on this Tuesday, January 3rd, 2023. So, let's get started on the latest with foreign policy and the news. The high cost of blowing up the world, Ukraine and the 2023 NDAA as reported by Matthew Errett at Zero Hedge. Will Americans wake up to the reality that they've been walking on the wrong side of history for too long, or has the point of no return been crossed? Bipartisan insanity was on display again this week as the U.S. Congress responded to Biden's requested $37 billion in additional aid to Ukraine by giving him $45 billion, bringing the total U.S. support to its Davos-managed disposable ward up to $111 billion. How will the $45 billion Ukraine money-burning project be used? That's not so easy to say exactly. What we do know is that $22.9 billion will go towards that Kiev will be expected to use to buy more weapons from private US-based defense contractors, and much of the rest will be enjoyed by NGOs and non-profits, which will more often than not be run by figures closely tied to those same creatures in the Washington swamp who voted for these bills. These uncomfortable facts were outlined repeatedly by the often slandered Republican Senator Marjorie Taylor Greene, whose multiple attempts to create some form of oversight and auditing of the handouts to Ukraine have been met with absurd levels of resistance since the special operation was launched in February. Even when such operations as the FTX crypto exchange, a major partner to Kiev and the World Economic Forum, was discovered to be simply a money laundering outfit infusing vast sums into the coffers of the DNC that were tied to Ukrainian operations, hardly a single Western Mockingbird press outlet made a peep. As the Pentagon Papers and Hunter Biden laptop reminded us, not only has Ukraine been run by a coterie of money laundering grifting politicians enjoying endless skimming of foreign aid, Pandora Papers revealed that both Zelensky and his billionaire handler Igor Kolomoskoy were both tied to offshore shell companies representing hundreds of millions of dollars of stolen loot, but also energy firms like Burisma, which has been caught extracting revenue from the Ukrainian people the way silkworm farmers extract silk. And what happens if you find yourself among that precious minority of Republican or independent voices of resistance to this new plunge into world war? Just ask Representative Matt Gaetz, who has been called out alongside other patriots such as Jim Jordan and Lauren Boebert for not applauding Zelensky's pathetic speech in Congress this week. For the crime of keeping their hands from slapping in lockstep with the rest of the congressional herd, NBC analysts like Michael Beschloss have attempted to stir up a McCarthyite witch hunt, asking why these representatives refused to clap, asking, "I'd like to know why that was for two reasons. Number one, you're a public servant. We're allowed to know those things. You're supposed to tell us if you're serving in Congress what the reason was. Do you love Putin, or are you just opposed to democracy, or is there something else?" The fact that these figures even dared ask where graft was going probably touched a nerve too close to home, with the Pentagon itself failing its fifth consecutive audit in November 2022 with over 65% of its assets and expenditures unaccounted for. That's right, the government lost track of $2 trillion in 2022. Will Americans wake up to the reality that they've been walking on the wrong side of history for too long, or has the point of no return been crossed? Only time will tell. So, let's get started on the latest with health policy in the news. American Dental Association pulls away from pushing amalgam fillings. In a stunning move made without fanfare or headlines, the American Dental Association, ADA, has retreated from its decades-long, steadfast support for mercury-based amalgam, also known as silver fillings in teeth. The change in policy appeared in an updated 2022 version of the ADA's use of amalgam as restorative material on its website. Significantly, the revised policy now says the ADA supports the globally recognized need to reduce environmental mercury as set forth in the Minamata Convention on Mercury, September 2019, as a common good, and recognizes the responsibility of dentists to care for their patients' well-being. Mercury is a heavy metal known to be poisonous to the human nervous system. Dental amalgam is a tooth-filling material that is approximately 50% mercury. While it is recognized as a hazard to human health, many dentists still use amalgam despite having viable alternative filling materials for restorative procedures. The Minamata Convention on Mercury is a global treaty to protect human health and the environment from the adverse effects of mercury. One of its goals is to end the use of amalgam worldwide. In the past, the ADA has steadfastly refused to align with this goal, but the rewording of its policy shows that the ADA is taking the convention seriously. While they still haven't outright conceded that amalgam is unsafe, the policy revision is stunning and encouraging, said Charlie Brown, National Council for Consumers for Dental Choice. With your support, we can keep pushing out amalgam use entirely for everyone. So, let's get started on the latest with economy in the news. FTX and SBF Ponzi scheme like the S&L scandal of the 1980s, and the Enron and Bernie Madoff financial scams. This latest iteration of the classic Ponzi scheme managed to destabilize markets and rob countless investors of their life savings. Sam Bankman-Fried, SBF, a 30-year-old crypto celebrity icon and celebrated savant, founded what he claimed were two separate companies, a hedge fund called Alameda Research and FTX Cryptocurrency Exchange, before going the whole hog by hyping his own fiat crypto token and then used it as collateral to create hundreds of millions in loans for himself, before robbing his depositors to embezzle and gamble away untold fortunes on the markets. And that's just the beginning. It turns out that SBF was the number 2 political donor to the Democratic Party, and used his laundered proceeds to bankroll a sizable portion of the Democrats' 2020 midterm election campaigns, not to mention his mother just happening to be a chief organizer for the Democratic Party as well. Not surprisingly, the Biden administration waited until after the midterm election to begin an investigation into the floppy-haired SBF and his FTX Ponzi empire. SBF was eventually arrested in the Bahamas and awaits federal trial in the Southern District of New York. The trial is sure to be both shocking and entertaining in equal measure. But the real question remains: how will this drama affect the government's role in the world of cryptocurrency? More crucially, is the FTX takedown really a controlled demolition of crypto, designed to pave the way for an oppressive central bank digital currency global cashless takeover? For the last few years, Elites have been gathering at globalist confabs like Bilderberg and the World Economic Forum in Davos to wax lyrical about the need to abolish the old money or dirty cash, and to make way for the central bankers' new central bank digital currencies, CBDC, turning the planet into a full-blown cashless society. In the US, this technocratic overhaul is being hatched under the guise of Project Hamilton, as a joint effort between the Boston Federal Reserve Bank and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, to design and plan the release of a digital dollar, which will destroy the value of old dollar in order to force people onto the new monetary matrix. As cash disappears from the economy, so does privacy. Essentially, CBDCs are meant to be an electronic form of fiat money in a particular country or region, but unlike Bitcoin, this digital coin is centralized and regulated by the governments and their central banks. Without ever putting this matter to a public vote, elites and technocrats have simply been moving ahead to implement this authoritarian monetary system. While the mainstream media and globalist think tanks claim that the CBDC is designed to rein in cryptocurrencies and supposedly tackle crimes like money laundering and tax avoidance, something which elites partake in daily, the reality of the CBDC is something altogether different. They plan to issue a programmable currency whereby the bank can control where and what you are allowed to spend your CBDCs on. They can also shut your money off. Imagine this digital money system combined with a Chinese-style social credit score, or a vaccine passport, digital ID. This dystopian digital control grid will transform commerce and human society in ways we cannot possibly imagine. For these reasons, many rightly believe that this is the road to digital slavery. The window of opportunity to push back against this massive authoritarian assault is now closing. So, let's get started on the latest with natural health in the news. Natural immunity provides better protection against Omicron than COVID shots. Natural immunity provides better protection against the B.1.1.529 Omicron strain of the Wuhan coronavirus, COVID-19, compared to the vaccines, according to a study. Dr. Robert Malone, the inventor of mRNA vaccine technology, elaborated on this in an article on his Substack. He cited a November 24 study published in the International Journal of Infectious Diseases, which observed unvaccinated hairdressers and hospitality staff in the Netherlands. The researchers who penned the November 24 paper collected blood samples for the participants every 3 months for 1 year. They also made the participants answer questionnaires about their health and line of work. The study concluded that among unvaccinated Dutch hairdressers and hospitality staff, SARS-CoV-2 antibodies persisted for up to 1 year after initial detection in the blood, suggesting long-term natural immunity. They also found that there were very low rates of antibody reduction over time, and that immunoglobulin G antibody levels remained detectable for up to 12 months despite an initial decrease. Malone then shared another study that supposedly highlighted the benefits of COVID-19 booster doses. According to the December 2022 paper, increasing booster uptake would result in a 1% increase in protection against the less deadly Omicron. Of course, as the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has implied that extra 1% protection would wane rapidly and be gone in 60 days, said Malone. It doesn't get any more clear than this. These boosters are not effective and, by the way, they're not safe. The mRNA vaccine technology inventor then challenged readers to juxtapose the results of the booster study with the one done in the Netherlands that documents natural immunity to COVID-19. The adverse event rate with these vaccines is extremely high. At this point, the risk of an adverse event is much more than the risk of severe disease from the circulating Omicron variants. Clearly, the results are in. Natural immunity is best against Omicron. Additionally, Brownstone Institute shares more studies in favor of natural immunity. The Texas-based think tank Brownstone Institute also shared several studies that proved the superiority of natural immunity over the COVID-19 injections. An initial batch of 30 studies was published on October 10, 2021 in cooperation with epidemiologist and Brownstone Institute fellow Dr. Paul Elias Alexander. A week later on October 17, 2021, Alexander himself published an additional 161 studies on natural immunity. He commented, "We should not force COVID-19 vaccines on anyone, when the evidence shows that naturally acquired immunity is equal to or more robust and superior to existing vaccines. Instead, we should respect the right of the bodily integrity of individuals to decide for themselves." Alexander, a former COVID-19 senior advisor to the Department of Health and Human Services, added that public health officials and the medical establishment, with the help of the politicized media, are misleading the public with assertions that the COVID-19 shots provide greater protection than natural immunity. But he argued that according to basic immunology and virology, natural immunity confers protection against a respiratory virus's outer coat proteins. This protection does not only apply to SARS-CoV-2, but also to other pathogens. Alexander also pointed out that those injected with the COVID-19 shots are showing the same very high viral loads as their unvaccinated counterparts, which means that both are capable of transmitting COVID-19. Tearing apart the vaccinated and the unvaccinated in a society, separating them, is not medically or scientifically supportable, he concluded. So, let's get started on the latest with prophecy in the news. The end times and the Great Reset. The present historical hour heralds the approaching end of times. Everything that is predicted in the Holy Scripture is taking place. The fathers of the Church have classified this very clearly in their exegesis. Here, Saint Irenaeus of Lyon is to be mentioned in particular. In his work Adversus Haereses, he makes it clear that the course of world history is analogous to the biblical days of creation. These 7 days correspond to the 7 epochs of history. Irenaeus writes that before the coming of Christ in glory, that is at the end of the 6th day, comes the greatest recapitulation of wickedness, mysterium iniquitatis, or the summing up of the lawlessness in the history of the world. The Church Father refers to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 3 through 12 and interprets the 7th chapter of the book of Daniel. There we read in the famous prophecy of the so-called fourth kingdom, "Then I wanted to know more about the fourth beast, the beast that was different from all the others, quite terrible to look at, with teeth of iron and claws of bronze, that ate everything and crushed it, and what remained it trampled with its feet. Also, I wanted to know more details about the 10 horns on its head and about the other horn that had grown up and before which the 3 horns had fallen off, the horn that had eyes and a mouth that spoke insolently, and which finally seemed to be bigger than the others." The angel answered me, "The fourth beast means, a fourth kingdom will arise on earth, completely different from all other kingdoms. It will devour the whole earth, tread it down and crush it. The 10 horns mean, 10 kings will reign in that kingdom, but after them will come another. This one is quite different from the earlier ones. He overthrows 3 kings, he blasphemes against the Most High and oppresses the saints of the Most High. To him the saints will be delivered for a time and 2 times and half a time. But then judgment will be given. That king will be stripped of his power. He will be finally cut off and destroyed." Daniel chapter 7 verses 19 through 26. The final horn of the fourth beast is the Antichrist, in whom the mysterium iniquitatis is embodied. This ultimate and personified manifestation of the adversary brings the recapitulation of the whole apostasy from God, the globalization of wickedness. The reign of the Antichrist is measured to last 3.5 years. It should be noted that the book of Daniel is in great parallel with the secret revelation of John. There it speaks of the beast that came up out of the sea, resembling a panther, with the paws of a bear and the mouth of a lion, Revelations chapter 13 verses 1 and 2. The result is that in his image the seer has fused into one the 4 beasts that Daniel was shown in a vision, Daniel chapter 7 verses 2 through 7. If John uses these symbolic figures in Daniel for his description and condenses them into one single animal figure, this certainly means first of all that he sees the Antichrist as a political ruler who uses all his power for the purpose of eliminating the last remnant of God's reign on earth and helping him who is opposed to God to absolute power over the world and mankind. The beast succeeds in the political unification of the peoples of the earth and the establishment of a worldwide dominion. His dictatorship is thus all-encompassing. With the help of such universal power, it is now also possible for the beast to enforce for himself and his master public worship everywhere, which the Antichrist will claim for himself. His number is 666, Revelation chapter 13 verse 18, since he wants to place himself above God, because the number 333 indicates the one true God, namely the Most Holy Trinity. With the appearance of the Antichrist, before the end of times, the hostility to God and Christ in world history reaches its climax and at the same time its end. By virtue of his superhuman abilities and possibilities, the Antichrist is able to usurp universal world dominance before God finally plunges him forever into ruin. In our time, a technical, media, political and economic centralization has become globally possible, combined with total surveillance. The basic conditions are prepared from longhand to conjure up a universal dictatorship. The Antichrist will thus represent the strongest political power in world history. He will establish a godless world empire, and in it he will also seize the entire economic power. Revelation chapter 13 verse 17. The anti-Christian power of the end times is therefore also connected with an anti-Christian worldview, with a kind of state religion. The church of the end times will be a martyr church, and all former glory will have vanished from it. To sum up, the Antichrist or the anti-Christian power of the end times will be the strongest political and economic power that has ever existed in the world. His kingdom will encompass the whole world and at the same time represents a spiritual power that will proclaim a new faith to take the place of the old one. But the Lamb will defeat the Antichrist in his power. Revelation chapter 17 verse 14 and chapter 19 verses 20 and 21. For more information related to Bible study support, getting closer to God, staying healthy, food scarcity solutions and more, visit our friends at www.divinesourcesolutions.org.
Thanks again for tuning in with us at TNN's Daily Headline and Prophecy News with your host and angel of truth, Joan of Arc. Please join Joan every weekday, Monday through Friday, as she continues to cover hard-hitting, truth-filled news topics in these prophetic times. And remember, the truth shall set you free.